Good morning, Building Kingdom. How we doing? So, the seals came in for the transmission. I already swapped those out. Nothing crazy there. I don't have a seal puller, so like most people, screwdriver, hammer, ping pong, pop, pip, got it out, put the new ones in. I did use the old ones to drive the new ones in so that I wasn't beating on the new seals. But those are in, those are good. This broken dipstick, however, has decided that it is going to be a royal pain in my butt, and it will not come out. I have bent it with screwdrivers, grabbed it with pliers, twisted, pulled, yanked. It just keeps breaking little pieces off. It doesn't want to come out, so I got to pull this bottom pan off and try to drive it out from the inside, which I'm not happy about. But it is what it is, and that's what we're going to have to do. So, flip this bad boy over and I'm going to get this pan off of here. Ugh. I mean, even with an aluminum body, these things are heavy. All right. This fan could use, fan? What fan? This pan could actually use a little body work anyway. It's got some dents and some deformation here on the bottom of it. So, let's hope that this comes apart without destroying the gasket, because I don't have another gasket. I do have some gasket maker, RTV, that we can use if it doesn't mess it up too bad. But this pan is pretty beat up. Let's get this pan off. Let's get that dipstick knocked out of there. Maybe flatten the bottom of this pan out a little bit because it's a little wavy. Get this back together because we also got the flex plate for the motor. We can make this stuff up and we can put this in the car. That is a huge step, and I am excited to get there. In a minute after we get past this, I will show you the motor mounts. They're the cheapest ones off eBay, and they look like the cheapest ones off eBay. That's really all I can say about that. Hopefully they work fine. Hopefully they work fine. If I say it 3 times, it'll give us more luck. Hopefully they work fine. Because they don't look exceptional. They still have like the smoke stain from the plasma cutter on them. Like they didn't even wipe them off. They just like cut them, bent them, threw them in a box. Which is fine. They're the cheapest ones on eBay. Yeah, it's gonna be fine. Well, good news? Bad news? Let's go with good news. The pan came off without messing up the gasket. Unfortunately, it broke 2 bolts off. That's not what I expected to happen. Really didn't think those would break. They did, yeah. One here and one over here. This one's a through hole. Probably wouldn't be too bad to fix. This one, not so much. Do you think I have metric taps here? Maybe they aren't metric. I mean, I guess it's possible. I just assumed, I guess, that they were metric. But they might not be. Either way, we broke 2. That's a problem. Maybe we could put it back together and it wouldn't leak. I don't know. I can tell you that dipstick was an absolute pain to get out. That was not fun. That wasn't a good experience. But that's out. So that's no longer a problem. Now we have this problem to deal with that I didn't expect to deal with today. And I'm not thrilled about at all. Not even a little bit. So I guess I gotta try to drill these out and maybe retap them if I have tap. That sucks. Okay, so as you can see, this is back together. By the miracle of God, I was able to hit the center on both bolts, which is amazing. That never happens when you're trying to do it by hand. I did start very small in the drill bit, and I got this back one first, which actually is a through hole, not a blind hole. So that was cool. I stepped 3 times up until I got to the 17/64, which is what you need in order to tap a 5/16 18 hole. Yeah, standard. So that's cool too. So I did this one first, nailed it, came over to this one, and somehow managed to do it again. My luck didn't run out. I walked over to my bolt bin and I pulled 2 bolts out that match and our 5/16 18 with a shoulder. So that's a whole lot of luck in one spot, which is cool. I'll take it. I should probably go in the house and see what my wife's doing. Anyways, we body worked the pan a little bit. As you can see, flat. I dusted it off quick with a wire brush and hit it with some rust reformer while we were doing all that other work. The gasket on the pan was, I mean, it came off in one piece. It didn't fight us at all. But 2 decades, sitting under the stairs in my father-in-law's basement, it's pretty brittle. So I did swipe a thin layer of silicone all the way around the housing before I put the pan on. So that's on, that's tight, torqued to brad spec. That is good. Seals are in it. It's already got a training mount on it that looks like it's in pretty good shape actually, which is surprising. We need to put the flex plate on the motor and make these 2 together, figure out what the torque converter situation looks like, and get one piece of drive line. That's where we're at. Okay, so I told you I'd show you the motor mounts. These are the motor mounts. Like I said, they didn't even clean the smoke off. I probably should have cleaned the smoke off, but it was like a late night after work and I kind of just threw them on here. They're slotted, so where exactly they're gonna be, I don't know. That's what happens when you buy cheap, but I'm a cheapskate, so there we go. They're on here. We're probably gonna have to move them. These are just finger tight. The bolts came with it, so I'm surprised I can't move that. There, so they move back and forth. We'll have to figure it out when we get down near the motor mounts here, but oh, my apologies. Yeah, so those are both on there. We are on the cherry picker. I have one of those things for leveling. Do you think I could find it anywhere? I can't. It might be at my father's house. I don't know where it is. I'm not sure. So this is where we're at. I gotta grab the transmission off the bench, bring it over here. We gotta put that flex plate on. Why does that thing look like it's tipping? Either way, my uncle's gonna be here in a minute because Don wants me to go look at a square body pickup with him. So I gotta step out for a minute and go do that. And then when I get back, we will jump back on this. Fun times. All right, so we've got the flex plate on here. I reused the flex plate bolts, which is frowned upon. I did put a drop of blue Loctite on them and then just tightened them up. I didn't torque them or anything, also frowned upon. So that's good. This being a 6-liter, and with the 6-liter flywheel, you don't actually need the crank spacer and the bolts for the torque converter lineup. You don't have to overload any holes. So that's cool. That's a bonus. I just got done filling the torque converter with oil. So technically, we should be at the point where I can put the torque converter on the transmission. Got to make sure it's clocked for the spline and for the oil pump to, make sure it's in all the way before we go to make these 2 together. So that's where we're at. We got to do that. Standing here talking to you, and I said I reused those bolts, and I'm remembering that I might have bought bolts for that. I should probably go check. But anyways, I'm going to make these 2 together. I don't think you really want to watch me clock this on here and slide this in. I mean, maybe you want to watch me struggle putting this transmission on there. But I don't want you to watch me struggle. I know I bought bolts for the transmission to the motor. So I got to go dig through my pile of stuff anyway. So we'll be back when this is together. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so as you can see, we are mated together. Checking my packages, I did not order flex plate bolts. So reusing the old ones was the only option we had. I ordered bolts to bolt the transmission to the motor, and I ordered bolts to bolt the torque converter to the, what is leaking? I don't know. The torque converter to the flex plate. Those are the bolts I had. That being said, the bolts from the transmission bell housing to the block. You only get to use 5 of them. 2 on this side, 3 on this side. There is no flange hole on the bell housing for the top bolt, and this bolt here is not drilled and tapped from the factory in the block. So 5 bolts. Lots of guys have done this. This isn't a new thing, so I'm not that worried about it. This is mated. I'm hoping that the angularity we have hanging here will work for installation, because I don't know where my balancer thing is for the cherry picker. So I'm going to test fit the tranny mount quick to see if we have clearance to get it in there. If not, I'm going to have to make clearance quick before I lower the car down. Once I am done with that, we're going to try to put this in and hope that it goes well. So far today's been a-okay. Oh, we didn't buy the square body. It was pretty rough. So, back to this. Well, it would appear we have some clearance issues. And the issues are not side to side like I thought we were going to have. They're floor. So that stinks. Where it bubbled up for the exhaust to come through is hitting the floor on the passenger side. There is no floor on the driver's side, so that wasn't going to be an issue. But basically the only piece of good floor that we have inside the car is now in the way for this. So we are going to have to make a tranny mount. This tranny mount is not going to work. So that stinks. I'm going to have to figure out a way to hold the back of the transmission up so that we can make a transmission mount. So I will probably end up cutting this part off and welding it to a new piece. However we figure out and decide to do the transmission mount. So that stinks. It's never easy. So I guess I'm going to yank this out of here. We'll try to get the motor in. We should be able to put a jack under the transmission and jack it up. We got to do it on the floor anyway, so I'll be laying on my back. Let's try to get the motor in, get the bolts in to the motor mounts and everything, and get the motor sitting in the cradle. And then, like I said, we'll jack the back of the transmission up with the floor jack and get it, basically level where we want it. And then I will have to, we might just have to tack a piece of metal in here for now just to hold it up and come back later and weld, make a transmission mount. Not that big of a deal, just a little bit of a hiccup. It's going to slow us down a hair, and I beat that in there and can't get it out. It's just going to slow us down a hair. It's going to, add one more thing to the list of things to do. But whatever, we'll be all right. We'll figure it out. Junk. Okay, the car is down. The motor is right here. We need to take the motor, put it in there. I am really hoping we can clear this hood, because I don't want to take it off. I don't have a lot of hope on that. Thinking now that I'm looking at it, I'm going to get this out of my way. Maybe I'm going to get it out of my way. It appears to be bolted from the front. Alright, so, long story short, this might be in the way. So I'm going to go to time lapse. I'm going to get that, I don't know what that is. I'm going to get that out of the way, try to open this space up. And then I'm going to jack this thing up, try to put it in there. We're going to do it in time lapse because it's probably going to take a little monkeying around back and forth. I don't know where those motor mounts are supposed to be. We're going to do some messing around here. So I'm going to flip you to time lapse. I'm going to get this bracket out of the way, which might be this wrench right here, I'm thinking. Half. It is. It's got like 8-mile-long bolts on it though. So time lapse. Well, of course, we've run into a bit of an issue. As you can see, that bolt is in. But over here, the pulley is hitting that. And I didn't think that it was supposed to. I thought everything I read said it cleared. But you know what, now that I look at it, we are really far forward. I'll bet if I slide this back in those motor mounts, that will probably clear. I think that's what our problem is here. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna slide that back and hope that this clears and I can get that bolt in. I think that's the mistake I'm making right now. I think that's what the issue is. I think if we slide this motor back a little bit tighter to the firewall, because it is really far out, and there's supposed to be a radiator here. So I think that's the problem. I think if we slide this back, that will clear, and then we should be able to get those motor mounts in there. I grabbed the camera to show you this before I realized that that's probably what the issue is. So let's do that. Yeah. Okay, so it's in. The hood is closed. We do have a little bit of a clearance issue right there. The alternator is hitting that little crossover. Just barely. Not a big deal because we have to cut this hood anyway to do all the stuff on top of it. That I am not worried about. What I am worried about is that the lines for the power steering are actually laying on the steering shaft. So I'm gonna have to go do some, I guess, investigation on the internet and see what guys are doing about that. Maybe just if I take that plastic cover off, that might solve all the problems. They might clear enough, a little bit of bending. We might be good there anyway. But I don't know dimensionally where it is supposed to be forward and back. See, we've slid back now. We're a lot tighter to the firewall. I'm probably gonna take this fan off and run electric fan, so I'm really not worried about that dimension. But forward and back, where it's actually supposed to be, kind of matters for the drive shaft and the transmission mount. So I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research and figure out exactly what I'm gonna do about that, because I am not sure at all how that's supposed to be. So that's interesting. But back to the steering. We were gonna do race car style steering, so this might not be an issue at all, really, because I could just put a piece of 3/4 shaft in here with a knuckle, what are those things called? I don't know, universal joint. So that's probably not a problem now that I think about it. And as you can see, we moved back and this is no longer a problem. I would like to not have to take any of this stuff off. I'd like to just leave this like this and not have to mess with it. That comes back to our intake. I don't know what we're doing here. But the engine's in the car, the weight is on the chassis. So the ride height is better. The front end is now down, not up. You can see that come down a lot. It's gonna come down a lot more when you add a radiator with water and stuff in it, and when we build this entire front bumper section out of steel, that's gonna be a fair amount of weight too that's gonna bring it down. But at least the car is not pointing at the sky anymore. We're down. So that's cool. It's in. We do have to figure out a way to hold the transmission up for the time being, because we can come back to where exactly this is supposed to be down the road. And technically we have the drive shaft that came out of the Malibu. I could see if that fits, and we could actually move it forward and back to wherever is best for that drive shaft, possibly. That might be an option. Again, I don't think this is going to be an issue. I was worried about this. I don't think this is going to be a problem. But then again, that is also a power steering pump that runs a brake booster setup from like in one of the newer trucks. So this power steering pump might not work. We're going to have to come back to this later. Or maybe we'll just put the brake system out of a truck in here, because we don't fully have anything for that anyway. And we've got this one over here that came off of the Malibu that we could probably use, brake pedal and booster setup. Or maybe we go to a Hydro Boost style setup out of a truck. We could steal out of my parts Avalanche, actually. We'll come back to this later. The weight's in the car. That's really what we wanted. The bolts are in, but obviously none of that is finalized. So we got to figure out how to hold this transmission up. That's what I got to do. Might just be a ratchet strap situation for now, but that's what we got to do. All right. As you can see, training mount. It's just holding it up. Turns out having giant holes in the floor is somewhat convenient. You don't really have to climb under too much. You can kind of just reach through. We're just kind of hooked into a couple holes here, just enough to hold the transmission up. The motor's in the motor mounts. Oil pan clearance looks pretty good. It's about right in line with the cradle, which is nice. That's why I went to the low profile oil pan, I guess it's a plan. Clearance on the steering looks good up front. The power steering, again, not super worried about it. We definitely have to figure out our front to back, you know, with the slotted holes on the motor mounts. Not that big of a deal. We could definitely put the drive shaft in here. That will help us with whether or not we can use that drive shaft and whether or not we can use that drive shaft to figure out where exactly this motor should be. So there's that. But that will determine where this cross member actually goes. So we're going to have to figure that out. And I think I'd want to figure that out sooner than later, this cross member. So, it's probably enough for today. My wife is actually texting me, telling me I need to come in and eat. Because, you know, you get out here, you get moving, and you forget about it. So I need to go inside and eat something. And that probably means I won't come back out here. Maybe I will. Probably not. So tomorrow morning, I'll come out here and address what we're going on here. Probably try to see if I can get the drive shaft in. And that'll give us an idea of how much movement we've got here and what we can do with that. And then that should hopefully answer maybe our question on the motor mounts, and maybe we can actually tighten those up. I don't know, maybe. But if all that goes well, if all of that goes well, I could probably mock up a quick transmission mount. Because what we're doing isn't super low to the ground, I don't know as to how much issue it's really going to be for the exhaust clearance, because it is going to be somewhat high off the ground. The BadMobile is not close to the ground. Basically stock ride height, whatever that winds up being, with all of the weight on the car with the stock springs in it. So, I don't know. We can modify in the future, just a tranny mount. I can throw my tripod under here, lift the tranny up, take the tranny mount out, throw a couple of pipes in for through ports for the exhaust if we have to. But what I'm thinking is probably a piece of angle through the old bolt holes. Maybe, maybe not. We might drill new holes and just make it straight across, because the old one kind of came at an angle. So these holes over here are way further forward than these holes over here. So we might use these holes and then measure back from a common point and drill 2 new holes on this side and just make it straight across, because that's just easier. So a couple pieces of angle on it, a couple pieces. You know what, now that I'm looking at it, this is under the pan, so maybe not. Maybe we'll go back to these holes here, and then I don't know what we'll do over here. We might have to do something different over here. But either way, we can build a tranny cross member mount here with a part of the old mount and maybe a piece of pipe just straight across with that mount welded to it. A couple pieces of angle. If we do that on this side, we're gonna have to space it up. We'll figure it out. Not that big a deal, but we'll get this mounted hopefully tomorrow, and then it'll be in. That's the goal. The goal is to get it in and hopefully never have to take it out again until we break it. That's positive thinking, right? Is that positive thinking? Whatever. Till tomorrow. What's up? As you can see, we kind of moved ahead a little bit here. I dug through my scrap pile and found a couple pieces of thick wall angle iron that surprisingly were exactly the same size. I must have cut them for something and not used them, but they were in the scrap pile, so perfect for what we're doing here today. I drilled the holes from the stock mounting point on this side and bolted this one up. I measured back from a spot here in the frame rail that's the same on both sides to the center of this one, and then I went from the same spot on the frame on this side back and centered up this one so that we have a straight pipe all the way across. Piece of leftover roll bar tubing that we had, I cut down and fit it in there. That is not welded, it's just sitting there. I then grabbed the drive shaft and fit it in here, and we are too far back with the motor. So I gotta lower the car down, I gotta take the cherry picker and we got to slide the motor forward a little bit. We're not off by much. I mean, we got to go forward maybe an inch in the motor mounts. So move the motor forward maybe an inch. That should make it just right to put the drive shaft back in. Once we have that distance figured out, then I can come back here and start welding this all up. I'm going to cut the mount off of the old transmission cross member and weld it onto this piece. I looked at the old transmission cross member to figure out the height of where this is supposed to be, and it appears that the stock height was right about even with this piece of the frame here where the old mount was. So our height actually with this ratchet strap is right about where it's supposed to be. So we got lucky on that one, and we should be able to just cut that piece off the old one, weld it to this tube, and bolt it to the transmission. So should be pretty easy, not super complicated. The frame was a little bent over here from somebody putting a jack under it and jacking it up, so I bent it back down. But we're also going to tie in, while I'm under here welding, we're going to tie in the unibody to the chassis here in a couple of spots, because it's tied in the back where the roll cage is, but is not tied in up front here anywhere to hold the body down. The core support's tied down, the back of the car is tied down, but here in the center area around the firewall, we are not attached to the chassis, and we should really attach to the chassis somewhere. So we can attach here, we'll put a piece of angle, weld it in, kind of box the chassis and box the frame and the body here a little bit. And then in the future, we might come up here somewhere in the firewall area and actually mount it again up tight to where we were. There was a spot that was really good. I gotta look under the hood again. There was a spot right out here that we might be able to use to attach it even better. Or we could drill a hole down through it, put a bolt through it. But we're not there. We gotta get this thing down, gotta move the motor forward like an inch, and then we should be good for the drive shaft installation. We can start locking this motor and transmission down where it's supposed to be. I like it. I like it a lot. Oh, there's a drive shaft. If you look right here, you can see the old wear line from when it was in the Malibu before. Now, you're thinking that's not in all the way. You got to remember, we're fully sagged down. When the suspension goes up, this is actually going to move in. So I did this on purpose because we don't want it way back here, because this spot is obviously not where it was running. And the tail shaft does stick out. The output shaft does stick out a little bit. So we've got plenty of engagement there. I'm not worried about that. I actually like how this looks right now. If you look at the motor mounts, you can see the space back here is pretty much the same as the space back here. So we're centered this way, cockeyed, or whatever you want to call it, in the tunnel. You know, it's pretty centered. I could probably take this side forward just a hair. Looks like we might have, they look about the same. Might be able to go a hair forward on this side. But I think we're at the point now where I'm pretty satisfied with the location in the car. So I think I'm going to tighten up all these motor mount bolts, get those all snugged up. And I think I'm going to just go ahead and put the caps and stuff back on the drive shaft to the rear end. And we'll just call it in there. The U-joints and everything feel pretty good. Like I said, the Malibu didn't have a ton of miles on it. So, yeah, I probably should paint the drive shaft, but we could do that in the car, not that big a deal. We're going to have to come under here anyway when we get the floor pans in and spray. So we can spray that when we do that. Maybe we'll just put it in gear and let it spin around after it's running and paint it. Put sandpaper on it, clean it up, paint it. That's awesome. I cannot believe that the driveline is in the car, and like actually in the car, like all the way back to the rear end. That's crazy. That's a huge step. I'm getting excited. This is a big deal. So now let's lock the motor down, and then I can finish this transmission cross member. Yeah, this is awesome. This is cool. Look at that. We got a tranny mount. It's kind of pretty too. Well, motor's locked down, all the bolts are tight. That is where it's going to be. The tranny mount is in there, it's mounted. We are probably going to have to make modifications for exhaust clearance. What exactly that's going to be, I don't know yet, because we do have to come through here. I remember the old one bent up over here for clearance because the exhaust went down that side for the Malibu. So what we're going to do exactly, I don't know. We might just, I could grab a couple pieces of like 3-inch or 4-inch exhaust, not exhaust, like plumbing piping, thick wall plumbing piping, and we could cut it and actually weld it in here and send the exhaust through it. We could notch this for clearance, but that's going to create a serious weak point if we do that. So I'm not sure entirely how we're going to do that. I mean, we could just stay under it, but that's going to bring the exhaust down below the frame rails, which is it going to be too low? Probably not. I don't know. But you know, once we get our manifolds on here, we come down. We have to go through some type of muffler. What that's going to be, I don't know, but it'll probably be back here. So we'll come down through some type of muffler system here. And then we got to do that whole over the frame rail back to the outsides over here. So exhaust is going to be another thing. We might have to modify this when it comes time to do the exhaust. Not that big a deal. But for right now, we have a cross member in the car, bolted in. Everything's tight. The drive shaft is in the car. It's just crazy. So we can set this thing down now. I do want to pull the oil filter off the old pan though and put it on there just so that's not open to the atmosphere. We don't want dirt and stuff getting in there. So, but I mean, that's a big deal. That is a huge step we just made. That's awesome. So we grab that oil filter and we're gonna put this thing down and start taking a look at these front fenders and how we're gonna widen these front fenders out. Oh, I gotta put the bolts in the torque converter. I'm glad I saw that. Now what did I do with the brand new bolts that I had? I don't know. All right, so as you can see, I kind of threw this fender back on here quick so we could get a look at it. I think that's about what we're looking at, about 2 inches. Looks like it might be a hair wider in the back, but we can make it 2 inches. That's pretty wide. But as you can see, the front tire isn't quite as cambered as much as it was. We're more straight up and down now because we got some weight in the car. And again, it's going to come down even more because we're going to put a lot of steel in the front of this car for this whole front bumper system, plus the part on the hood. We're not using super heavy steel, so it shouldn't be crazy, but you've got that steel, you've got the radiator, so there's still a fair amount of weight that has to go on the front of this car, which is going to bring it down even more, which is going to take some more camber out of it. But right about there, we are out so that we've got pretty good clearance here on the tire. We have to cut the fender here for clearance for turning. The same thing with the front. The front goes straight down. Basically, I think I'm going to end up having to cut it right about at the body line and go straight down, which is pretty much what the movie car looks like. Back there, we're not cutting it at the body line. Back there, we're going to cut it right about where that tape line is and go straight down. Not a big deal. We got to fix the door. We got to build a rocker. We got lots of stuff going on in the middle section here, but we got to get these front fenders basically where we want them. I haven't even cut that one yet. The front of this is drooping just from the weight, so we'll have to lift this up a little. I don't know how we're going to do that. I'll put the jack under it. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do here. Maybe we can pull a mount off of here or something to hold that up. We got to do a little bit of stuff here to this front fender. I'm going to have to... The jack's not going to be able to stay, so I'm probably going to have to cut this and bring something out to hold it so it can stay up where it's supposed to be. And I still got to repair all this rust here that we don't have on the other side. I got to make a patch panel for here, which that's multiple layers, so that should be fun. Should be a good time. No, it's not going to be a good time. Awesome. Anyways, so I'm ignoring that. But that's where we're at. I think that's where it needs to be. Width-wise, about a 2-inch strip. I think that's going to do it right there. Yeah, that's cool. I like it. I got to figure out how to fasten this thing up. Well, it's wide. Now that we got it down where it's supposed to be, we can start playing with these front fenders. I've already got them partially mounted. I threw a little mount inside off the firewall to the inside of the fender. So in the next episode, we can cut the bottoms of these front fenders off. I ordered an exhaust kit. It's a bunch of pipes with the U-bend and everything, and some oval outlets. So maybe, just maybe, if the stuff gets here on time, we can start figuring out what we're doing with that exhaust exit over there on the side, so we can kind of work on the bottoms of these front fenders. We can piece in the tops of these front fenders, and we can start working on the front end of this thing, getting it straight across, and our filler pieces for here, so that we can actually start building this front bumper. Of course, once we get the exhaust pieces in, we figure out how we're going to do that, then we can move on to the rocker panel. And once that rocker panel's in, then we can start working with the doors. So, forward motion, and a little more of a creative process is coming down the line. So, as usual, keep it creative and happy building.